Napoleon Hill once said, "Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit." And we couldn't agree more. This is Lift Me Up. We're here to have candid conversations about something we all face, trials and heartache. We're here to explore the positives that emerge from these things. We have a blast. Remember, no matter how tough things may seem, there's always a way to rise above. This is Lift Me Up.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Lift Me Up. I think last week, Mike, you decided to start clapping in the middle of the introduction.
I think I did. It was one of those,
Or was it that you were just like super unenergetic? Like there was just no life to what you were doing.
Whatever it was,
something like that.
It was very awkward. I remember.
It was very awkward. But you know what? That's what makes it fun. That's what makes it us.
Yeah,
is the awkwardness of this. Super excited to have a good friend on. We've known each other.
You guys are
goes back to
just go ahead and say how old you are, and then you'll
elementary school. Wait, was it an overlap of elementary school? I think it was.
Probably like third grade, dude.
Yeah, the whole time. So we had Mitch on. Mitch's actually episode here drops soon. So it's kind of this, all of a sudden it's like all the people I've known for a long time were just kind of smattering in here. So it's been super fun and excited to have Mr. Nathan Hawks on here with us. This is also I guess it'd be out of the last 3 podcasts, 3 episodes. This is the second Nate. It's the name, gotta keep with the names. Anyways, but how's the week been? Phenomenal, fantastic. Yeah,
great.
Yawner. Yeah, great.
Yeah, busy.
Yeah. Mike and I ended up in Boise this week at the same time.
Didn't even realize it. I just said, "Where are you at this week?" And he's like, "Boise." I was like, "Oh, hey, me too."
So we went to dinner on that one of the nights, and it was always a fun time. And unfortunately, the Mammoth lost. That was the downside.
Game tomorrow.
Game 7. No, 6. Game 6 tomorrow. Anyway, we get into hockey now. Well, let's kick it off. Lift me up moments. I've got one. If you want me to go first,
yeah,
I think you've been going first most of the time. So
I have. I've been actually prepared. So now we'll let you, since you're prepared.
I guess. So I had a moment, another one of those where other people are lifting me up. I think that's been the trend for me most often recently, is other people lifting me. And I was doing, I do some consulting, some business and HR consulting on the side of the everyday that I love, but had a client that I went and sat down with, did some presentation to, and gave them an outline of procedures and some stuff that they needed to kind of adjust for their business to be, take them to the next level, right? And one of the most wonderful things sometimes is when somebody just says, "I didn't expect that. That was awesome. I appreciate it." And sometimes even if you're the subject matter expert, and you're the one that's giving the outline or the detail or whatever it is, we've talked about this on here before, the imposter syndrome. I think I can't remember who it was, but we had a long, we talked about, that's right, with Joey. And the idea that, am I even supposed to be in this room? You kind of question yourself sometimes and understand, take for granted your own value. And it's nice to have people reaffirm that, what you do means something to them. And, you try to provide the service to them, but little do they know they're actually doing it for you. So that was a big thing that really buoyed my spirits and was a big lift me up this week, is somebody doing that for me.
I think that's great, because for me, I know what that feels like on the other side, to be the person that says that, and actually how genuine it is for me. Because for some people that do it day in and day out or whatever, it can seem mundane at times. And so I think having those moments when you actually vocalize that you appreciate what they offered is a good thing to remind them, because it can be difficult at times to just go in and do the same, pitch. And I know with consulting, it could be like this, but to just hear it is is there definitely refreshing at times.
Yeah,
for sure.
Agreed. Well, that's what did it for me this week. So
That's great.
What about you?
I was trying to come up with a second one because my first one is a little selfish.
I know what your first one is.
Yeah,
I know exactly what it is.
I do have to say it because I know we
don't
talk
say
a
it,
lot
dude.
about...
I'm telling you, don't say it, because if you say it, it'll never happen again.
I've got a wood table. I'll knock on wood.
Whatever.
It's fine. It's on the record book, so it's fine. I officially had my best round of golf in my entire life this week. And it's not just, it was one of those that you tell to anybody and it should hopefully be impressive. I shot a 75 on a par 70 course, which is 5 over. So I shot 5 over on 18, which I have never broken 80. I have been in the mid 80s a handful of times, but I would say I'm a consistent, upper 80s, 90s kind of guy on a regular basis. And just, it was something, I don't even know. There's no answer to why it happened, but I did have a witness, so I can officially say it was official. So anyway, it just felt good that there's some, this is super random, but I've seen there's this guy online that he does these these like videos, and maybe you guys have seen him, that if amateur golfers had post-game interviews,
post-game press conferences,
and he talks about one of them in particular. He says, how does it feel? One of the questions he gets is, how does it feel to have your buddy who's never really played golf outdrive you today? And he jokingly talks about, he's like, I don't think it's fair. You have to suck at this game for a really long time to deserve those kinds of scores. And I feel like I've sucked for a long time that I earned that score. So
that's awesome.
It was super cool. I was trying to come up with a second one that was a little less.
You don't need to. I think that's one that sometimes all the stars align. And
yes, it was good.
It's like I went when I played in Salt Lake, and I was playing with those 2 random guys I got put with.
I remember you calling me after that one.
And I was like, oh my gosh. I played one of the best rounds of golf I've ever played in my life. Same type of thing. And I got 2 random guys that I don't know, thinking I'm
sign this for me. That
I'm just an ace.
This?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I know I don't know you, but could you please do me a favor?
All right, we got to get off that tangent before we go.
Yeah, I know. We could fly. That's 2 episodes in a row that we've gone real deep into golf. You can tell 'tis the season. 'Tis the season. So Nathan, it's your turn. Why don't you share with us your lift me up, and then let's chat.
Yeah, I've got 2 separate ones that are related and what feel like really appropriate for this show. And the first one is, and it was like 2 weeks ago, but then there's something that was kind of follow up that happened yesterday. So 2 weeks ago, I got on at the gym. I hopped on a treadmill next to someone I've known for a long time. I'm not good friends with her, but just acknowledged her and said, hey, it's really good to see you. That's it. That was all it was. She pulled her AirPod out and goes, oh, what's that? Oh, yeah. Nice to see you too, Nathan. And then we just sat on the treadmill next to each other for, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes, did our thing. I mean, she ran a lot faster and harder than I did, but anyways, usually when I go to the gym, I'm there for about 2 hours doing my thing, going through the various routines and things I think are important that are arguably helpful. And she comes to me at the very end of my routine, and we were kind of both walking out. And she came up to me and she goes, Nathan, I just wanted to let you know that it's been a super rough time for me lately. And the fact that you said hi, I just want you to know how much that means to me. Like that was really helpful, really impactful. And honestly, I wanted to cry. I was like, let me give you a hug.
Yeah.
And, the second part is something that I am actively trying to do. And this isn't to toot my own horn by any stretch of the imagination, but I was given a challenge a couple of weeks ago that I've just delayed and delayed. And the challenge is to come up to, or sorry, not to come up to somebody, but to find somebody in your contact list on your phone that you haven't spoken to in a couple of months or in a while. And the reality is it doesn't matter who it is. It could be your mom, or it could be your sister. It could be your best buddy that you just talked to 20 minutes ago, and you send them a text, and the text should say, hey, remember this really fun time that we had? Like, I really, and then you bring up a good moment, and then you finish off with a compliment. It just says, I appreciated what you said, or I appreciated how that turned out, or that was one of my funner memories, etc. And the challenge is to do one of those texts every day for 30 days. And so yesterday I was on the road to Ogden, and I thought, well, I've got time. I've got nothing better to do except listen to some Lift Me Up podcast episodes. And so I sent a text to a buddy, and about 3 minutes after he got the text, he called me, and I had a conversation with him, and he didn't say any details of anything. I just knew, but based on how he was talking, that it was impactful. And it's a testament that you never really know what somebody's going through. You never do. And they could even have like a happy face on, or seem like they're just their normal selves, but maybe they've got something going on inside. And I don't know. And it's one of the things I'd love. I mean, we could spend forever talking about this, but I think that a lot of times you are often the answer to somebody's prayer, whether it's said out loud or just in their heart, and you never know. So it's impactful to me because I had that foresight to take action, to go out of my comfort zone, send a text. It was to a guy I haven't spoken to in about 6 months. And anyways, I don't know if he's going through a rough time. He didn't say. He just told me that it was very, very meaningful and probably the greatest thing that happened to him all day. And so
That's awesome.
Man, that was a great experience.
That, it's, if you remember my sister Melissa, right? A year younger than us. And one of the things that in the kind of the last few years of her life, one of her biggest things was to just very randomly text people. And on this show specifically, we have done just what you described and challenged our audience to, pick up the phone, send the message. Don't let fear over, be the thing that holds you back of, it's been so long. And what you just shared is exactly what Melissa exemplified in everything she did. I mean, it was constant. It was a random text from her. Hey, just love you, brother. Just want you to know I love you. And it was just like, it's like, oh my gosh, because the time was not necessarily on her side, and she recognized how impactful it is to others, but in that self-reflection of knowing that they were meaningful to her. So exactly what you shared. I really appreciate you sharing that. That fits very, very well into what we've talked about for many years on this show. So it's wonderful. Well, good. Well, I think that kicks it off perfectly to get a chance to talk to you.
Right.
Why don't I've got some questions for you. I'm sure Mike does as well. But why don't you take a minute, just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and let's just kick this baby off.
Well, I have to tell you guys, first of all, to kick this off, it was easy to want to be on this show. It was easy. I starting off in the right spirit. I have so much respect for you guys. I just think the world of both of you. And we've had our own interactions at one point or another, right? Whether it's at school or post school or at the store, we've run into each other.
At the movies.
At the movies, yeah, right.
In fact, right here. Yeah, I recognize that.
Yeah, that's pretty epic. Nice. And our interactions have always been good, and I've always appreciated it, because there are some people that don't carry that spirit of optimism and positivity. And I know you guys have both faced many challenges, and what shining examples you guys are. So that's I could spend a lot of time talking about you guys, but I just wanted to make sure you knew that there are people who are watching you, probably beside myself. I would guess that there are a lot, but there's a lot of respect that you guys have earned from lots of people.
Well, thank you.
I don't know. What do you say about yourself? Let's see. I own a couple of businesses. The one that is the most noteworthy is a digital marketing agency called Arcane Marketing. And I have been in digital marketing for 20 years. This is my 20th year. So that seems like a really big achievement. I remember that and it's happened a lot of times where I've been with people at conferences or meetings and they're like, yeah, I've been in digital marketing now for like 18 months or for 2 years. And people are like, oh my gosh, you must know so much. And I don't know what that makes me, but now I feel like I'm a little bit of an OG. And there are some, but there are not very many people in the industry that have been around longer than I have. And so it's interesting. I'm super passionate about marketing, super passionate about it. But I found that I'm even more passionate about some other topics that have to do with leadership in lots of different ways. I have a wife of almost 23 years, probably the greatest decision I've ever made. And for any of you who know me or who know my wife, in fact, it was kind of funny. We were just talking that I got the better end of the deal. She just took one for the team. So it worked out pretty good for me. And then I have 4 kids that are of the ages of 20, 16, 12, and 8. And I always joke that they are all boys except for the 3 girls.
There you go.
I try, my hobbies are, I guess it's a bit of a hobby. It's not my favorite thing. And I always complain about it. I feel like I have a bad attitude, but I go to the gym 5 or 6 days a week. And what's funny is that I'll tell people that and they'll be like, so are you jacked? Nope,
No.
not yet. Still
Well,
working on it, right?
Much better off than me. I couldn't probably add up 5 days.
Mike
during
doesn't
the
even
last
know how to
10,
get to the
20
gym.
years. Yeah.
I had a gym membership. I've shared this before, but I had a gym membership, signed up online. The only time I went to the gym was to cancel it.
Yeah.
Got that
That's
going
actually
for
pretty
me.
funny.
True story.
But it's funny that you guys talk about golf because that's been a really big deal. And one of the neatest things that I can think of is that my son is my youngest one. He's 8. And this may make some people skittish a little bit, but I'm just so proud. There are lots of days where he comes up to me and he says, hey, Dad, can we go golfing? And it's hard to say no if you're busy because I really want to go and I really want to take him. And he's good. He's good for an 8-year-old. And the other thing that's kind of funny too is that there's 2 other things that he really enjoys. And one of them is he goes, hey, Dad, can we go ride the Razor or the 4-wheeler? Or, Dad, can we go shooting?
Boy.
The answer is yes to all of those things. It may not be an appropriate time or we're doing some other things, but 100% I want to say yes to all of those things. So I feel like that with him asking me those things that something's going right. And anyways, and then probably one of the things that I'm most passionate about is the fact that in my agency at the moment, there's around 15 employees. And my passion is really trying to help all of my employees to learn and grow and get better at their jobs and become better human beings themselves. And so, man, I don't know what else to say. That's probably about the best description
I love
can give
it.
for now.
I think it speaks perfectly into why we wanted to have you on here. And to quickly tie in the story of that, you were going to the movie with your wife. I'm sitting in the same row, and I saw you walk up, and you said, hey, this is me. And I said, no, you're not allowed to go this way. And your wife goes, oh my gosh, I was wondering who had the nerve to say that. I was like, oh my gosh, that is so funny. And one of the greatest movies I've seen in I don't even know how long.
So good. It was so good.
Incredible movie. And Project Hail Mary, I think we can shout it out there. Fantastic movie. Book is incredible. And anyhow, so then we're caught up right after it had ended and we're chatting. I said, dude, you got to come on. And this is where we are. So
yeah,
I'm really excited to make that happen. So for our listeners, everybody knows we've shared it before. We send a questionnaire to everybody, all of our guests, get a little bit of where their mind is and some of the topics that they may want to talk about and maybe don't want to talk about. You happened to share something on yours that I thought was pretty cool. You mentioned that this is your guest 50th time being a guest on a podcast. And you were very particular about saying not 49, but 50, right? So we hit the 50 mark. My question for you is this. Of those 50 times you've been on a cast and been interviewed or had an opportunity to have these conversations, whatever variety of things and topics they might have been, what have you learned about yourself in 50 episodes?
Good one.
Yeah, that's a good question. No, say this kind of tongue in cheek, but I think I've always known this. You can ask me just about any question about just about any topic, and I've got an opinion about it.
All
And I
right.
don't
That's
think that I'm
okay.
abnormal, but one of my life goals is that I seek wisdom. Let me just explain to you real quick what my definition of wisdom is. And I've never heard anybody else say it this way exactly, but the more I've thought about this for the last, maybe it's 20 years or so, the more I've latched on to it. In fact, some of my friends call this natelage, is what they call it. It's funny. It's funny how they're like, "Oh, you're giving us some more natelage," but wisdom is an equation. It is knowledge plus experience, right? So knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. And so one of my life's goals is to learn wisdom. And sometimes I know a lot of stupid factoids about random things. I don't know why I know some of the things I know. I honestly don't. I don't even know how I remember some of it when I'm trying to remember many, many other more important things I can't. But I have always been able to offer some what I feel like is a very self-centered opinion of good advice on most of the shows that I'm in. And I like that I don't feel uncomfortable talking to anybody. I really feel comfortable. I'm very extroverted to a point where I know that it comes at sometimes it's socially at my wife's expense. She gets very embarrassed for me, and rightfully so. I do
Would
make
you
a fool
just
of
shut
myself
up
quite often.
already?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much that. And so, yeah, I'm kind of that bumbling idiot sometimes, but sometimes, once in a while, something that comes out of my mouth makes sense. And so, I've felt like that I'm comfortable having a conversation about most things, and there's really nothing off the table because I don't ever say anything with hate in my heart or a very hard nosed, one sided opinion. I like to think of myself as one of the most open minded individuals. And so, yeah, that's what I've learned about myself, to be honest.
So, okay, let me follow that up with another question. You and I are the same age. And something that I think is interesting, I have heard the knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. I've heard that in variations, maybe not exact variations of that particular equation. 100% subscribe to that. I think that's absolutely dead accurate. I think we live, and you and I, before we hit record and before Mike was on, we were kind of waxing philosophical a little bit about the experience of days and what does it mean and did I learn something and things like that. And I think back, if you could identify something that now, or maybe this way, you've got something that 30-year-old Nathan knew or thought he knew. Can you think of things
Many
that you
things.
thought you knew then and you push back now? Like, hey, whoa, whoa, whoa. 30-year-old me that's not the way that works. What do you learn between that time frame and how do you create that wisdom of learning?
I feel like that my habits, maybe when I was 30, were different than they are today as far as what I pay attention to, the type of media perhaps that I consume. Being in digital marketing, I spend an exorbitant amount of time on social media. And I really, every day, I feel like I lean harder and harder into this fact that I thought I knew. And maybe I had some of the knowledge, but the experience part was lacking. And it's the craziest thing, like, even just in the last 3 years, the amount of maturity that I've gained in emotional, spiritual, and intelligence knowledge has just, it feels like I'm, 6,000% better than I was even just a couple years ago. But I think that the thing I realize that I think about often is I'm happy with the knowledge and the experience that I have. And I know enough to know that I don't know enough about any topic. And it could be about digital marketing, one of the things I'm super passionate about. And admittedly, I feel like I know a lot. But then I hear things and I'm like, man, that is so good. And it's so fun to continue to learn. And I think I mentioned this on the questionnaire. It's more into the fun side, but maybe this is a really good time to incorporated is that I think the thing that I have figured out, let's go back to when I was 30 to today, right? 45. And I hate that I know this. I hate that I know this because it just means that I've gone through it. But there have been some in my own ways, and I can't even begin to compare some of the stresses that you guys have gone through with deaths in your family. But there have been some dark days in my life. And it sounds like an oxymoron, but I can't even begin to tell you how grateful I am for those dark days, because that makes me appreciate the good days that I have. And I wouldn't even know the good days are that good if it wasn't for the crappy times I've had to experience and live through. And I am so grateful for those opportunities to learn and grow. I don't want to go through dark days. I don't want to go through those challenges, dude. I really do want to just have life on easy mode. But how blessed am I to not have life on easy mode? And that's made me become this more wise person, perhaps. So I think it's the fact that I just was missing out on some of the wisdom, right? When I was 30, I didn't have that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think there's the greatest part about it is there's the two parts that you talked about, right? Like there's the knowledge and then there's the wisdom or the experience, right? That creates that. And so to be able to do that, you've got to have the experience side. And so one thing I wanted to ask you about is that I feel like ties, and I don't know the story of it, but I'd love to hear the story of this, was you talked about is an experience that you had with one of your daughters. Yeah. And that changed your complete view on kindness and judgment. And I feel like those two words are very powerful. And so to have an experience that changed those two things, I feel like, I mean, not to put a lot of pressure on you, but it better blow my mind. No, I'm just kidding. But I think it's it hopefully will give a good example of like maybe, the 30-year-old Nate is who the 45-year-old Nate is now. You know what I mean? So
100%. And what's funny is that I'm probably going to look at when I'm 60 and go, I thought I knew a lot when I was 45.
Oh yeah, we will.
That's 100% chance that's going to happen. So it's this really fascinating story, and I want to apologize in advance if I get a little emotional about it. I have this daughter, right. And this was probably 6 or 7 years ago. I think it was right before COVID. And a good buddy and I took our families and we went down to Lagoon to hang out for the day. And it was a really good day. Just overall, it was just really fun. And I don't even think another story for another time. But my daughter, I think she was 5 at the time, was very innocent and making observations. And I won't use his real name, but let's call him John. And we got up early, went to Lagoon for the day, had this long day. I feel like my friend and I got closer, our families got closer. Most importantly, my kids and his kids absolutely had a blast. I mean, it was just phenomenal. And it was probably 11 o'clock at night. And we just rolled in from Lagoon, because what's Lagoon, a 2.5 hour, 3 hour drive from here at least, right?
Yeah.
And so we were tired. Man, we got there when the park opened and we left just before it closed, or maybe it was around midnight. I can't remember. But I was tucking my daughter in, and one of the father-kid things that I have tried to do with my kids is I try to have a conversation with them. It just super briefly, and it doesn't always happen, but it's like, hey, what did you learn today? Or what happened today? What was fun? What are you proud of that happened today? Or what was something that was impactful? And I didn't even get to ask the question. I'm tucking her in, and she goes, Dad, I saw John drink some beer today. No, she said, John was vaping all day. And Dad, do we love John? I said, yeah, honey, John's a really good guy. And yeah, he's really good. But Dad, he was vaping. Do we still love him even though he vapes? Because vaping's not right. I said, honey, vaping is not healthy, but that doesn't give us any reason to not like him. And Dad, he was drinking beer at lunch and at dinner. Like he had a couple of those throughout the day, but we know that drinking is something that's also not healthy, right? Do we love John even though he was drinking beer? Yeah, honey. Yep, we do. And Dad, he was saying adult words. He was cussing all day. And he was saying things that I know that we're not supposed to say. But do we still love John even though he was cussing? And I said, yeah. And look, I could see at this point where this was going. And I said, honey, this is something we can talk about more, and we probably will have more conversations, but it doesn't matter the choices that people make. And it doesn't necessarily matter what race they are, what the color of their skin is. It doesn't matter how they vote politically. It doesn't matter if they are from a different religion. Your job is to love everyone and give them that respect. And we talked about, because everyone's a child of God and they all deserve that same love. And just because they make choices that we don't doesn't mean we don't like them. And you could tell she was just kind of sitting there thinking about it and pondered on it for a moment. And then it was tired, right? It was late at night. It was a long day. And so I said, hey, I'm going to go to bed. So let's say our prayers. And she said this prayer that I'll never forget. She said, in the prayer, she said, Heavenly Father, please bless John and help him to know that he is loved. At 5 years old, I didn't know that the words that I was telling my daughter would land and have that. She was wise beyond what she probably even fathomed at that moment. And it caught me off guard. And it was one of those moments that just like a slug to the chest. I was like, that is amazing. The experience that I've had with her since that point, and I'm not saying she, isn't like a normal child. Sometimes gets rambunctious or gets in trouble, does all these things, but she gets into stressful situations. And maybe it's because she's a teenager and drama just comes with young girls, I guess. But the way that she handles those drama that comes up at school, the things that the kids tell her or the things she hears about other kids, in my mind, she is such a shining example because she takes that I need to love everyone first approach. And she is also very extroverted and will talk to anybody. And she is that girl that will go, see someone sitting alone at lunch, she'll go sit next to them and just make sure that they know that somebody's paying attention, or she'll come to someone's defense. And she's so much stronger than I. And I can't believe that my daughter is teaching me these lessons and she doesn't even know it. But I remember that was such an impactful moment when she said that prayer. And so that's the story. And that's one of those things that I feel like I knew, but the fact that my 5-year-old daughter was so wise in the way she said it and how she said it so innocently with the right spirit and mind could teach me a lesson like that. And so I've never forgotten that.
It's amazing.
That's crazy.
Amazing.
I've actually had a similar experience, and I won't share the whole story, but with a different subject matter with with my youngest, who's 8, and my wife and I kind of had that same kind of thought process of like, holy cow, like I'm an almost 40-year-old adult and I just learned one of the most powerful lessons that just molded me to have a different perspective on life. And it's like you said, it's proof that there will be down the road a time that you look back on that and be like, dang, I didn't really know that much. But I am grateful for experiences like those, because they honestly, they're so impactful. And if we just listen, there's so much more out there that we have to offer, people have to offer. And that's why I think having, so many guests on, I think it was Mitch actually had said, he's like, he considers himself just an average guy.
It's an average guy.
But if we really sit down and look at it, we all have something to offer, because you don't know when a hello, which may seem mundane to you, but is so powerful to somebody else is just, I mean, it's proof. We just need to just open our dang mouth and just let it come out. It's like, you got me tearing up. It's incredible. It's incredible.
And this is
And
usually a
sometimes
show
it's-
where Mike's crying most of the time. So
Yeah.
Look, and sometimes it's not even, doesn't even have to be opening your mouth. While that's way more impactful, sometimes it's just a smile and a wave.
Yep.
Because
I
some
agree.
people don't even get that experience. And so, yeah, dude, 100%.
there's a, in true fashion, there's a psychology element to the way that we look for and communicate as humans, right? We need a lot of the basics of human life, which is, the food, the water, the human touch. We need relationships. We need interaction and development. We need all these different things. And I can think of many different times in my professional career where some of the most meaningful things that we don't recognize we're doing are the things that have a greater impact on somebody else for the good. I'll give you an example. I had a guy that is just a warehouse guy in one of our buildings, and he was going through some stuff, and it was really, really, really wearing on him. I mean, deeply wearing on him. And I've had the chance to interact with him a lot, just trying to build him into a not just a leader, but somebody that is independent of the thought and can actually feel like he can free think to go through and get things done every day in and day out. He sends me a message and he goes, "Hey, do you have a second to chat?" And very out of the blue. I haven't been to this building at the time, hadn't been there for probably 4 or 5 weeks, been super busy at some of our other buildings. And I said, absolutely, absolutely. So he gives me a call and he kind of walks me through this scenario of what he's dealing with. And it's pretty heavy. I mean, it's one of those that you recognize immediately. I'm not supposed to say anything. This is shut up, Nate, right? This is just listen. He needs somebody to listen to him. Shut up. He's not looking for an answer. And I just sat there and I let him vent and I let him talk. And I asked a few questions that led him down a different thought and different path that you knew he needed to get out. And then he said, "What do you think? What?" And of course, I'm just listening. I'm not looking to provide advice. And for the scenario and the situation, I just said to him, I said, "Be honest. Be honest with what's going on. Like, don't keep what you think will happen as the worst scenario. Just be honest about it." Right? And to be clear, it's not like he did something illegal or anything like that. But sometimes the honesty part of that comes from internal. He needed to be honest with himself. He needed to look inside and self-reflect and be that. And what you two are sharing is your opportunity came by listening, right? Like the opportunity just to slow down and listen to what your kids were saying had the greatest impact, and it's moments you'll never forget. But it also means that the two of you are doing something right. Right?
I mean, hope so.
Whether you think you are or not, we don't know. We never know the impact. There's always something, and we always hope that we're doing it right. Most of the time, I think we probably are. But man, people need us to listen. They just need somebody to vent to. That is huge, absolutely huge.
It's a part of it, but also kind of branches off here just a little bit that I think is an important point to highlight. And I have always been under this belief. While I'm under the belief, experiences have made me more solidified in my belief. And that is that I believe that 100% of your problems can either be prevented or solved with better communication. And I think about that a lot. And I have yet to ever come into a scenario where that wouldn't be true yet. I'm talking to my daughter and she was able to reveal that really neat lesson for me, or talk to that girl on the treadmill next to me, or I sent a text to a guy I haven't spoken to in 6 months, or what have you. And I think that if you can figure out how to be a better communicator, I think your life changes in a lot of different ways. And it could be in your marriage, right? Dude, do you know how many less fights I probably could have had if I was a better communicator? Holy moly, do you know how much happier my wife would be with me if I was a better communicator? And it's like a lifelong study. I don't know if anyone will ever be perfect at communication, but dang it, I'm trying. And do you know how many less work issues, you know how much less drama there would be if communication was improved? I mean, just think of all of the situations in any and every situation. And I guarantee you could somewhere pinpoint along the way that communication faltered just a little bit, whether it was on yours or on the other person's or one of the two parties involved. Think about the scenario, for example, with politically with President Trump in this war in Iran. I'm not saying that they're not trying, but we probably wouldn't have to be where we are if communication was improved, probably on both ends.
Yeah, probably. It's interesting because in marketing, you're literally living a world of communication, right?
100%.
You're trying to get a message out there. You're trying to communicate something very specific to an audience to support your client and do it in the most efficient and effective way. And, do you feel like your learnings of that industry has also made you a better communicator overall?
Yeah. Well, you know what? Yes. Yes, because it's marketing. Yes. But I think that it's just because I'm essentially a leader in my business where I feel like that has been stronger. Sometimes, look, sometimes we have clients that are not excited. Sometimes we have clients that are over the top ecstatic. And sometimes when you have that client that's not excited, maybe they're disappointed, right? And all disappointment comes from an unmet expectation. And we always talk about that if we don't set the expectations, the clients will set it in their own minds. And then usually what they say and they're set up in their own minds is based off of inexperience. And so they're usually wrong. But
Yep.
we probably, if we didn't say it, the client's going to assume it. And that's where the problem begins, right? But if we are better at communication, then we can say all those things or solve all those things before they even happen. But when it like there's a statement. Well, there's two statements. In fact, I made a video about this just the other day. There's two thoughts along the communication line I think that are really important. One is that, and I didn't make them up. I just think they're super cool. One of them is that you will lose more from indecision than you will from making the wrong decision. Because some people get paralysis by analysis, right? They're just thinking, oh, I want to make sure I make the right decision, and they miss their opportunity. And then the other one, this one's been like my theme for the last 3 months, is success loves speed. And so sitting around and waiting for things, and look, communication is a huge part of that. Like if I've got something on my mind and I want to talk to my business partner about it, I am so much better off saying it sooner than waiting for it to become a bigger problem later. Or if a client, and it's not just that, it's like, what about if an employee has a personal issue and you just don't communicate with them, and that can boil over into becoming a big problem that now affects maybe more than just themselves, it affects other people at the same time. It's a domino effect. But yeah, success
It can get expensive.
And it can get expensive. Yes, I've learned many financial problem mistakes that could have been prevented. Also,
I just wrote a book about that. So that exact thing of how damaging it can be when you communicate the wrong things. And I've shared this on here before, but I mean, from a hiring aspect, I had a situation where we had to settle. We got sued because we didn't communicate properly, and it cost us a little over $1.5 million to settle that. And that's a tough check to write. That's a lot of zeros for something that we should have done a better job. Oh, 100%. Got prevented in every other aspect of the things that we were doing, hiring, 300 to 600 people a month, and then you make one mistake and it's absolutely catastrophic. Now, we're a gigantic company, so we could absorb that number. 99% of the companies in existence cannot absorb that. And it simply comes from the level of communication that we failed on.
I think it's good to quickly point out too, because there's people on here that might be listening that are not as extrovert as you two are. And so the simplicity of this can go all the way back to, your kindergarten, basic understanding of communication. It's simple, it's basic, it's just opening your mouth and making sure somebody else is aware or whatever the situation. It doesn't have to be, going out and necessarily finding a stranger and doing, whatever it takes, right? Like we just, I don't know. I just felt like it was important because
that's
you guys
are
very good. We've always talked about this. Nate's always much better with his words than I am. You two are both that way. I'm more of the real done-ditter country folk guy.
I always appreciate an objective opinion. I really do, because that's where you learn. Because sometimes you get into this thought process and someone brings up an alternate point of view, and there's always something that you don't expect. And I have a really good friend he's a phenomenal objective person. Like everything, he's got some alternate viewpoint. We agree on a great many things, but there are a lot of times where I have an opinion, as I said at the beginning, and I like to express my opinion, as most people do. And he will pull me aside and be like, well, not pull me aside. He'll just kind of stop me and be like, but what about, and I always have to sit and think, and I'm like, man, what? That's such a good point. I didn't even think about that. Dang it. Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah. What's interesting about that is I had a thought that came and then left because we kind of went a different direction, but I feel like it applies now. I was listening to I was trying to be productive on my drive home from Boise. And I was like, I'm going to find a podcast or something that talks about, good ways to be a productive youth baseball coach. Okay. Cause I'm coaching a little more competitive league with some 11-year-olds right now. And I was like, I feel like I do an okay job. I want the kids to have fun, but I also am trying to make sure that I'm doing my part to let them grow. And a couple of things that stood out that was kind of more of a learning thing for me and humbling thing for me too were two things. One, it said that the boys don't always see the field as fully as you do. And so you have to be able to look at it differently. Sometimes it's frame by frame for them, whereas you have a larger picture. So you have to remember that. So that was a good one for me. And then also was the best coaches are the ones that are willing to admit that they don't know it all and find the best ways to learn and coach at the same time. And those two for me, I'm not saying I know baseball all. It's very passionate for me and always has been. But when you're coaching an 11-year-old, it's easy to fall into that, like, no, do this, like, what, blah, blah, blah. But they don't always see it that way. And so I think that perspective, right, was something for me that changed, is that I need to be able to look at how they're seeing it right now. And how can I explain it to where it is a little more frame by frame to allow them to connect with that. And so, yeah, I appreciate those moments as well. So.
There's a marketing
huge.
There's a marketing lesson in that we've talked about quite a few times in our agency, and that is that our clients, and this doesn't apply just to marketing. That's just where the example comes from. But another person's perspective is their reality, right? True, false, different than yours. This is what their reality is because it's from their viewpoint. And you have to remember that. So that's why it's not always black and white sometimes, right? So hearing that in that podcast about the players have a different perspective than you as the coach. And if you spend a little time trying to see it through their viewpoint and you get to understand them just a little bit better, yeah, what a great piece of advice.
Huge. There's a book, an author, Andy Andrews, and he has a series of books, but one of them is called Just Jones. And one of the key elements of that book is teaching the level of perspective and teaching how, exactly as you said, Nathan, it's like that idea that somebody's reality is currently their own perspective. It's what it is. But sometimes you have to change the perspective to get them to see the full field. They've got to see this. And that comes through a series of experiences. The knowledge creates the wisdom. I'll throw perspective in there as maybe a bonus word that fits the equation in its own way, because that part also creates knowledge and experience. And you have a different way of seeing something. And we need that in our lives. How else are we going to look back at the 30-year-old Nate and go, dude, you kind of got it wrong. You probably needed to look at it this way. And here's what would have happened had you done that. At the same time, I don't think I would want to change some of those things. I know there's some things I would want to learn and be better at, but at the same time, the experiences that I have now are super, super valuable to me. Super valuable. And I love that.
I think that there's a lot of, when we talk about perspective and this wisdom, there is another piece that I feel like that's totally appropriate to talk about here. It's not always appropriate to talk in all different situations, but probably one of the greatest things I've ever learned. And it's the perspective of how to treat other people. And the story I told about my daughter is just a partial example. But this is one of those things that I think about all the time. And I have found that there is kind of this magic 3 keys to everybody out there. And so far it has, and I've applied it thousands of times and it has never not come out true. 100% of people in existence require 3 things in their life. And it's a very broad perspective. This is not absolute. Every single person on this earth desires to be seen, heard, and understood. And we put that into practice with our production team and our account managers, for example, because when they're talking to our clients, the clients have a unique perspective. There's things that they know, there's things that they've done, there's beliefs that they have. And the most respectful thing that you can do is to make the client feel like they're seen, heard, and understood. And when those 3 elements are present in a conversation, I promise you that both people in that conversation will really enjoy it. It is a good conversation. But when one of those elements is missing, it could be okay. It could be good for maybe one person. But if both people get to feel those things, that's the secret to relationships. It's so amazing, and I feel like that's that right there. That's true Natelage. That's Natelage right there.
We were just blessed with Natelage.
Natelage.
That's right.
I don't. When I put this thing together, I don't know if I'm going to know how to spell that, so I have to figure it out.
ChatGPT can help you.
Yeah.
No, but the other part of this is, and it's a really big deal. It's a message that I spend a lot of time talking about with in every aspect of my life with my kids. I hope if there's one thing that my kids take from me, that is that one thing this world needs more of is kindness. And what's funny is that are either of you, maybe one of you at least, if not both of you, probably know who Gary V is, Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah. Love Gary V.
I am just so enamored with and such a big fan of when he talks about being kind to everyone and different examples that he brings up. And there was another one of those really neat hitcha moments that I heard a few months ago, and that in a statement, and that statement is, if you ever get the opportunity to choose to be right or to be kind, choose to be kind and you will be right every single time. And it's funny because when you think about it, there is a consequence to every decision, every outcome, every communication that you have. And the consequences could be good. or the consequences could be negative. And if you win an argument, there are probably negative consequences that come from that. Now, you get that elated feeling for a second, like, yeah, I was right. But what I have found in my life is that when I am right, that moment comes and it's fleeting just as fast. But when I'm kind, I think I'm the one that really won. And it doesn't matter what I was right or not. And that feeling gets to stick around for a long time, and it's way more satisfying. And so in our family, we talk about this kindness piece. At least we're not perfect, right? There's still arguments and bickering. I have 4 kids, but it is a lesson I hope that they take, is that there's always room for more kindness, and there's different ways that you can show that kindness. But that's one thing that is just missing, that if there was more of, I feel like there would be a lot more peace. Maybe communication would be better. Maybe more people would feel heard, seen, and understood. I don't know, but that's the
And their
piece
perspective would change.
and their perspective would probably change, right? How many times have your perspective changed and your heart softened just a little bit towards somebody's point of view?
Look, I've been married for 24 years. I've been kind for 24 and never right. I mean, it's just she's going to hear this and she's going to go, "That's not true." And I'm, yeah, that probably is a little bit true. No, I think that's the beauty of you shared something really important, and I appreciate that, because we can take everything that we do, and in all honesty, so much of it just runs cyclical, constant, and it's an ever moving thing for us, right? It's life. But the one thing that is always a choice for us is to be kind. If you consciously make that decision will yield to you probably tenfold. The things that you will probably experience, that the knowledge will come to you, and the wisdom that you will then yield from that will come as a great learner, because you made the decision to be kind. And I would agree with you, there's not enough of that in the world. We started this as an idea that Mike had, to just let people heal. Honestly, it was probably more self-serving in our own way to heal, with the loss and everything that we experienced as a family. But then it's turned into, several, sometimes tens of thousands of people that download this on a weekly basis and listen to this, that maybe there's something that we needed to share, that, yeah, the kindness side of that is important. I kind of forget about that. And that's what we want. We want those closing elements to then kind of loop us back into what creates perspective. Right? I think we're using a lot of great descriptive words today. This is an adjective-filled episode. It's wonderful. So,
well maybe one more comment about the kindness thing here, and then I'll let you guys wrap up. But just because it's necessary or just because it's needed doesn't mean that it's easy to do. I can think of a million situations where choosing kindness is probably the hardest choice.
Sure.
And you think about, in my mind, how many of the most amazing people are those 80-year-old couples, and they are just calm, and they seem like they're really wise, and they always have good information, and they are the most happy people. And man, that's what I desire so bad. And I can only imagine the experiences they've had to go through for them to have, let's say, some punk teenager, say that they already know these things, or maybe it's even a 28-year-old or a 45-year-old guy that's like, whatever, old man, and they're just sitting back patiently smiling and waiting. Why? Because it's the kindest thing to do. It's the right thing to do. What a good example. And it's not, it can't be easy. Now, there are times where kindness might not be easy, but it's always the right thing to do. But there are times where I feel like that kindness is the challenge, and that's kind of like what's been placed before you is, are you up to the challenge? Because I lose my patience a lot, and that's something I try to work on a lot. And as I am, I feel like that I'm getting a lot happier, but that's because I'm trying to choose kindness because I want to be like one of those 80-year-old couples that are just enjoying life and everybody loves them. And that's the thing. Like everybody looks up to them. So I that's all I wanted to say. It's not easy to be kind, but it is the challenge. But sometimes that's what we need is that challenge.
Totally agree. Well, Mike's got a question for you.
Okay.
And
Yep.
and then we will wrap this episode up.
So we do like to always close because of everybody's perspective on this question. Sorry, I just had to add into that. So if you had one thing that you would like our followers and our listeners to take away from today, what would that be?
I think we've talked about a handful of things that are all just near and dear to my heart today. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to talk about those things because they also within me bring and bubble up those feelings that I know that I should feel and reflect on. And I think there's probably, if I could just give you like a couple of little brief answers. One is I think everyone with just a little bit of extra work could do a lot better on communication. I think that it's a challenge for some people. It really is. But I think that everybody could do a little better on communication. And it could be the speed of how you communicate. It could be the words that you use to communicate. It could be not exploding when you hear some news you don't want to hear right away. Just practicing the patience. But there's lots of ways that happens. And then the other piece is that you never know. Honestly, and this is not unique to me. It's just the lesson I keep being reminded of. You never know what somebody's going through. You never know the stress or the strain. You haven't walked a mile in their shoes necessarily. And just simply being a little bit more kind has such a big impact. Like I said earlier, it's like you are the answer to the prayer. And as minuscule as it seems like it is, because there's a lot of these, it feels like there's a lot of negative scenarios and circumstances and drama and bad things that happen in the world. And by being just a little bit more kind, I think it makes it a lot more tolerable for everyone. It eases burdens. And so if there's two things I think that people ever remember me for, I want them to always feel like, well, he had a lot of nailage. That's the first one, right? And the second one is that that he, there's even discussions, and I've heard about this big discussion we can have at another time, but there's a difference between being nice and being kind. And sometimes nice is deceitful, but kind goes deep. And I don't want people to say, well, he was a nice guy. I want them to think, I really liked Nathan because he was kind. And I think that is probably one of the most meaningful things or best compliments I think I could ever hear.
Love it.
Absolutely amazing. Well, Nathan, it's absolutely wonderful to have you on. And I think there is another opportunity for us to have more of those conversations on another episode of this. That's for sure. So
let's do it.
With that, again, thank you for coming on. And to everybody, make sure that you like, share, listen, and we will see you guys on the next one. Everybody have a wonderful, wonderful day.
This has been Lift Me Up. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe so more people get the content. We can't wait to be back for the next show. But in the meantime, find us on Facebook and Instagram at liftmeup.podcast and the website at liftmeuptalks.online.